All right, everybody. On this very special after school special second episode, we are going to be reviewing the movie Observe and Report. This was recommended by
Ooh,
Brian here. Uh,
yeah, this is.
yeah, this was a very interesting film. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, this was I I have a lot of feelings about this movie, and they're a lot more visceral than I expected them to be until I rewatched it.
Now, this is to be clear, my very first viewing of this film. In fact, I honestly was not aware of it until you mentioned it.
Really?
Yeah, well, I never disliked the sort of, and this isn't directed by Judd Apatow. We'll get into this moment into a moment, but I was not a big fan of like the Adam McKay, Judd Apatow like 2000s comedy. Really, like I didn't dislike them, but
Oh,
I wasn't
yeah,
a big fan of them.
that makes sense to me. Like just kind of knowing your taste. I was a fan not of the plots of those movies, but of the performers and of I like improv comedy and all comedy or whatever, as dumb as all those terms are. I've always liked all that shit. So I liked a lot of those movies performance wise.
Yeah, no,
Um,
and like I said, I never disliked any of those movies. My favorite would probably be, oh God, what is it? Step Brothers. That's probably my favorite
Oh
by quite
yeah,
a bit. Um,
and that's actually so. I'm going to say just kind of speaking of movies very much of their time and the Judd Apatow thing. I mean, Judd Apatow is not directly involved with this movie. A lot of people in his general universe are though. I did watch Walk Hard last night as well, which is on another end of the spectrum, a
ooh,
very of
Walk
its
Hard's
time
great.
movie.
Walk
That's a
Hard's
great
great.
movie. It's a great comedy. I had a great time rewatching it.
Have you seen the trailer for the Weird Al Yankovic parody?
Oh no! I don't. I have not watched it yet
It's
because
very
I
much in the like realm of Walk Hard. It looks like.
yeah, that's kind of what I just saw clips of it and I knew it existed and that's kind of what made me think of. But I do want to see
It
that
honestly looks
film.
really funny.
Yeah, it looks fun.
I am glad though that Weird Al Yankovic is in a parody fucking
Yeah,
music
that's the
biopic
only
about his life. That's the only way they
well,
could make it.
well biopics inherently suck. I think they're
Yeah,
always the worst thing. They're
kind of
always
suck.
the most. I've never seen a biopic about that I liked. I don't think I ever have of a musician or something or an artist. I don't think they exist. And that's why I like Walk Hard because it hits all those really stupid beats. Um,
So you've never really got up into the guts in a shower of Bohemian Rhapsody or anything like that. Like you never just
oh, I started
like
Bohemian
put your
Rhapsody.
hand into it and just got ready to go with it.
Oh, I can't because I've started Bohemian Rhapsody and I was like, this is gonna suck, but I'll make fun of it. And it was so bad. It was so insulting that I was just like, no, no. And now the Bowie biopic is coming out, and everyone's going, it's a different kind of biopic. It's kind of meta. It's like Bowie himself. It's very, kind of like deconstructive. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't want them doing this today because I like Queen. I don't love them.
Oh yeah, they're a great band.
But I love David Bowie. Like, in a way
Yeah,
that
exactly.
fucking
Yeah,
nerd like me would. I don't want to see a David Bowie biopic. I don't want all these. I'm just turn into a fucking douchebag from the 2000s. I don't need all these fucking dorks who've never listened to David Bowie being, I love him so much. I love Starman.
yeah. To be clear, is his son directing it? Because the son is a director.
Yeah, and I don't think it is. I'd have to look and see if Duncan is directing that. His son is actually a very interesting filmmaker.
Yeah, no, didn't he? And I know this is not necessarily interesting, but I think he directed the like World of Warcraft movie that was a big failure.
Yeah, he did. I believe so.
It's really funny.
But that movie
Shit.
did Bafo overseas.
Oh, really? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's really funny. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Without further ado, here let's get into some observe and report details. So I'm going to observe and report some quick facts about this illustrious film here. Uh,
Please.
it came out in 2009. Was rated R. I didn't have to look it up, but I did just to be sure because I'm like, there's no way this movie wasn't rated R. Like literally no way
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was directed by Jody Hill, who's most known for the series Eastbound and Down. With
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, with Danny McBride. This movie was also written by Jody Hill as well. Um, this movie was produced by Donald Deline, who was a guy who produced a bunch of really mediocre movies like fucking 20 years ago. I'll go down the list and tell me if you've watched any of these movies or if you've seen them at like a used fucking DVD store, just any of these movies. The remakes of the Italian Jobs and Stepford Wives.
Oh yeah. I've seen the remake of Stepford Wives. I find it deeply offensive. Never seen the remake of the Italian Job. It looks so boring.
And I actually have seen this movie, the 2004 comedy with Seth Green, Without a Paddle.
I've seen Without a Paddle. Again, very mediocre. Very
mediocre. Body of Lies, the Ridley Scott movie.
I never watched it. I've seen it, like you said, used for DVD stores, of course.
The Paul Rudd and Jason Segel movie, I Love You, Man.
Oh yeah, I like that movie. It is mediocre. It's very of its time. Look, I am the right age and the right kind of nerd. That like, yeah, I like those fucking movies.
It's not the worst
all those movies.
I
like I Love You, Man.
It's not
the same with all those movies. I was watching it and like that's a movie that I think about sometimes when I think about how I am getting older, and this is gonna make other people annoyed either because they don't feel old in their age or because they are older than me. But I turned 30, last year, and I was like, oh, and as I was watching Walk Hard, and I think the same thing with I Love You, Man, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, this is like a movie that I would show my nephews the way that like my fucking dad showed me like Mel Brooks movies, and I'd be like, this is a real fucking good comedy. You gotta watch this.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, this is definitely a movie that came out when you were young.
Yeah. No, totally. That's a good anecdote. I do agree with that though. That's a very good anecdote of the.
Like that goes for movies that I love as well, like Walk Hard, which again I think are great. But I know if I showed that to my nephew who just graduated high school, he would be like, "Oh yeah, this came out in the 2000s."
And then the last two movies I wanted to highlight here. One, the Green Lantern. The Ryan Reynolds movie.
Didn't watch it. Didn't want to. I don't love Green Lantern, but I liked some superhero comics as a kid, and I liked Green Lantern enough that I hate Ryan Reynolds. You probably know I hate him. He just annoys me.
There's a lot of fake charm with him, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. And the very last movie I wanted to highlight, because I know this is Brian's favorite movie of all time, Ready Player One. He was the producer of Ready Player One.
That was a Spielberg movie, right?
Yes, that was a Spielberg directed movie.
That's so fucking sad. I mean, like, I guess you can't blame Spielberg for that because he's older now and he's thinking this is the type of thing I do best. It's a big fucking crowd pleasing fantasy movie, but like, yeah, I don't want to shock you, and I've not seen Ready Player One.
I have not either, and it's one of the few movies that I outright refuse to see. I will never see Ready Player One. Like, I will never see it.
One of the main reasons I don't want to see it is because I hate that. I like crowd pleasing shit. I have very middlebrow taste, and I like fun things, and I like, but like that something that pandering is it's also like I'm enough of a dumb nerd that I'll also be like, well, they don't really understand this thing that I like the way I do. Like I also I'd have that stupid response to it.
No, I agree. It's and you talk about Ryan Reynolds. He was in another pandering movie like that recently called Free Guy.
Did you? I heard that was kind of fun. I heard it was mediocre but kind of fun. Like I heard the action scenes were surprisingly good.
I heard that too, and like even though I don't really like Ryan Reynolds as an actor or like a lot of his movies, like
he seems like a fine person. Actually, it might be fake. He's an actor or whatever. I actually have read interviews with him, and I'm like, oh, you seem like kind of a nice guy.
No, and that's the thing. Like, even though his charm does seem a little fake and put on, it's not necessarily that he's a bad guy. He just seems like kind of like a guy with a nice flat affect guy who just puts on this facade of being like very like he's just like he was a guy that was like very much like a chiseled in the early 2000s, that era of hot guy, and he's kind of just kept that look as he's aged, and it's worked for him. But I just don't like his voice, and I don't like his vocal mannerisms, and particularly I think it's that when I see him, I see his character in Waiting, which is not fair to him. But
I find that movie just reprehensible.
Talk about we're going to talk about some certain scenes in this movie that are very reminiscent of a certain scene in Waiting. This movie is 86 minutes with credits, so very, very.
That is the perfect length to me for a movie, especially a comedy. I'm sorry.
Oh no, especially this movie, 86 minutes is perfect, and I don't even mean that in a detrimental way. I'm being dead serious. 86 minutes is perfect for this movie.
The thing is, and we're talking about the Apatow era. This is Seth Rogen's Stars Rise, and this is the height of Apatow critical reception. I'm stressing that because, again, Apatow is not involved in this movie, but this is Apatow era comedy. And if you're our age, I know people know what that means. His movies, what's the real criticism of them looking back for me is that they're so long because he wants to be like a real filmmaker. He's
exactly.
But then he makes these long movies, and you're like, why? Like, these are comedies. They're 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, I think Superbad is over 2 hours long, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's long. It's 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Oh, it's a little. It's actually 113 minutes, so a little under 2 hours, but that's still way too long.
Pretty long for that kind of movie. That's not. I'm not saying that I liked that movie when it came out. I probably wouldn't really. I'd be probably pretty indifferent to it watching it now.
Yeah,
but it's just But so 86 minutes, perfect for this because
agreed.
Not a happy world in this film.
Yeah, no, exactly. The budget was $18 million and the box office was $27 million. So
yeah, this movie did not do well.
Yeah, so generally in the film world, I believe you generally need to make about 2 times your budget in order to have any kind of profit. So this movie was a box office failure, although not as much of a box office failure as I expected after watching the movie, because the subject matter of this movie I was not expecting as many people to see this movie knowing the subject matter.
I saw this movie pretty shortly after it came out. Like, it was pretty fresh. I saw it right when it hit DVD. I didn't see it in theaters, but I waited for it to hit DVD and I went out and bought it.
Yeah.
And what I remember is people went to see, because this movie, I'm sure to everyone involved, was kind of marketed as a Paul Blart film.
Yeah, it seems
like it's the guy from Knocked Up, but he's like Paul Blart now.
Yeah.
And people went in seeing that, and I'm sure that first initial weekend was maybe okay. You might even have numbers on that. I don't. I should have thought about that when I was thinking about this factor. But I bet word of mouth spread that this is not a fun movie.
No, it is not a fun movie.
It's not a nice movie. That's why but to be fair, that's why I like it. I did recommend this movie.
Oh, here we are. So we're talking about the box office. So it made $27 million total. The film grossed $11 million in its first weekend.
Yeah, and then word of mouth gets around, and then it makes a little over
27 million. Yeah, so the movie made about 40% of its budget in its first weekend. That's pretty rough.
Yeah,
that's pretty rough.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm sure people went in thinking, this is that guy that I see in all those other movies, and he's nice, and he smokes a lot of weed, but he's really friendly and just doesn't really see, because that's, I think Seth Rogen's whole vibe is that he was a stoner, but not like a Cheech and Chong stoner, which was pretty fresh in mainstream comedy at the time.
Yeah, no, I think personally that if this movie was in the theaters for a month, I would say at one of those last showings of the month, like a couple could go in there and like fuck, and nobody would notice. Like there was like there'd be nobody in the theater at that point.
And I was reading reviews of this movie, and it didn't do again. And critically, my theory is that it's marketed kind of like an Apatow movie, and it kind of aesthetically is, and the dialogue's very, you had said improv heavy, which it is, and it's very, there's these kind of very smug, kind of cloying dialogue and things, but it is like I had said before we had started, right? It's Scorsese via Apatow.
Yeah.
And it's very self-consciously is that, I think, which is not bad to me. I think critically this movie didn't do well because it was so unpleasant, and I don't think that most mainstream kind of middle-aged film critics were familiar with the person that this movie was presenting. And maybe you and I was an online kid. I was on the forums, as they say. Kids now don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Well, they don't have forums anymore. They call them subreddits. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But so I kind of, and I have, we grew up, where we grew up, and I had friends that were not, I'm just going to get into it. I have to, and I don't think this movie did well critically because I don't think that most people that were film critics at the time knew this guy. They weren't on forums. They didn't have like friends around them that were around this age that were weird and kind of socially dislocated and things in this way.
Yes, and I would describe, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but I'm gonna take a piece of Chapo Trap House lore. But I think that this movie was based on a particular conservative hot couch guy, or like a libertarian-ish hot couch guy, like that type of person.
Yeah, no, hot couch guy is obviously like this, but that's what the phrase like, oh, this is that guy, but like the darkest version of that guy is in this movie.
Yes, absolutely. Like the darkest version of a guy like this who's not like an outright serial killer. Like,
yeah, I know. And that's the thing is, I don't think that critics or audiences knew how to process that. Because Seth Rogen, I think, his star was rising, and I think he was like, I want to subvert my image. I want to shake things up. I think that's an admirable thing for a young actor to do.
Oh, 100%.
Especially a comic actor. And I think maybe it didn't work exactly the way he wanted, but he didn't want to just be the frizzy haired sort. He wanted to be like, oh, I'm going to take this thing people expect from me and shake it up a little bit. Because he's still being that guy. He's still being nice and kind of awkward and affable in this movie, and then it switches, and you're not quite sure what to make of it.
Yeah, and not only that, but also another parallel with Butterfly Effect is that's a very similar thing that clearly Ashton Kutcher wanted to do with Butterfly Effect. That
this film is so much more successful for Seth Rogen.
No, I totally agree with that. But Ashton Kutcher obviously wanted to subvert the ideal that he was just pretty boy pothead, and it's like, no, I can act, and like it didn't really work out for him in that movie, but I think it worked for Seth Rogen pretty well in this movie. And speaking of critic score here, on Rotten Tomatoes, the movie has a 51% critic score and a 37% audience score. So I think you're right. Critics and audiences, I think a lot of them didn't really know what to make of this character.
I think in this movie. What happened when I remember reading reviews after I saw, because I didn't really read reviews, I just was like, I knew that it was a Scorsese-inspired mall cop movie with Seth Rogen. I was, however old I was when this came out, I was a teenager. And I was like, that's enough for I'm in, because I'm very susceptible to shit like that. Probably still am. And so when it came out on DVD, I get it. And I really liked it. Showed it to so many people. I was one of those guys for a while with this movie, because I thought I still think it's pretty good. It's tougher to watch now, so I wouldn't necessarily do that.
Yeah.
But I read reviews, and the thing I remember is people who seemed older who going like, "Oh, do all the bros that like Seth Rogen, like, is it gonna be funny when he's being racist and like being like a creep or whatever?" And we'll get more into all of this later. And I remember reading and being like, "Well, no, that's not why it's funny in a different way." But they were still thinking of the other Seth Rogen that they'd seen in other movies.
Yeah, and talk about. I'm gonna get into some facts here in just a second here. But there's also another interesting correlation between a popular television show that I know you have not watched, but I have started watching that will become relevant in a moment here. So I'm going to get into some trivia. The first piece of trivia, and this is where the TV show connection comes. This movie was filmed in New Mexico. Apparently, this movie, the filming of it, convinced Seth Rogen that he needed to lose weight after it became hard for him to breathe in the harsh New Mexico air. Which, if you do see this movie, it's very clear that he has lost a fair amount of weight, especially since Superbad. He's a lot skinnier in this movie than Superbad. And also, another fun fact, this movie was, once again, filmed in New Mexico, specifically at the Winrock Mall in Albuquerque, which is also where the popular TV show Breaking Bad was filmed. And also we were talking about how, you just mentioned earlier about how critics were talking about like, well, is it going to be funny when audiences see Seth Rogen being racist, misogynist, whatever. And that's like interesting connection with Breaking Bad that this movie has. Where a lot of like nerds online will say things like, well, I didn't really like the character because he was racist and that makes it bad. But here's the thing.
He's a meth dealer, right? I mean,
but in Breaking Bad, he's a meth dealer. But in this movie, he's like a vigilante fucking rent-a-cop. But
he's Travis Bickle, but he's a rent-a-cop. Yeah,
but the thing is, like, a movie is not bad because the character does bad things.
Yeah, the character doesn't exist to be your fucking friend. This is such a pet peeve of mine. Oh my god. Because if you were on the internet in like 2013, 2014, you were like, I really am disappointed that this character that I relate to did a bad thing. And it was like, not always as bad as what's that. That's not the point of a story. I mean, maybe it is for some stories. That's fine. Not every story exists for you to just be like, everyone on screen is me, and I am reflected in everybody. And if you assume that everyone that likes a movie that you see sees himself reflected in the main characters, you're insane.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's honestly two funny Breaking Bad connections, but there's also another Breaking Bad connection too. The black like buff cop who's interviewing Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
That guy was Walter White's oncologist in Breaking Bad. So I would like to think that this movie is in the same universe as Breaking Bad. And that oncologist, when he's on his second job, he's a cop in Albuquerque. That's what I would like to think. so that's honestly really funny.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't know why so many things were filmed in New Mexico at this point. I don't know if it was like a tax
things.
It must have been a tax thing. Because nowadays everything's filmed in like Georgia.
Georgia, yeah.
So like back then, maybe New Mexico was like the tax haven or like the tax break state that everything.
That's what I have to guess.
But I will say
it was just for all the beautiful New Mexico scenery.
Yeah, exactly. Like, haven't you ever just wanted to go to Las Cruces and
die in the heat? Like,
yeah, die in the heat while on fentanyl. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like, just, whatever. The next piece of trivia here is that Warner Brothers was concerned about the dark subject matter and demanded the production team come up with a lighter, softer version of the film. In their words, it was not until test audiences gave the edited version poorer test scores than the original version that Warner Brothers let them release the film in its original form.
Thank fucking God, because a softer version of this movie does have issues. So
yes, I agree with that.
I'm going to tie this back to what we were talking about before about seeing yourself reflected in the characters. The only way that this movie works and it all is because it's as dark as it is, because it goes to the place it goes to. I think there's maybe one exception with that we'll get to, but for the most part, I think if you soften it, the movie's pointless.
Yes, I agree. It comes across as very limp-wristed. Like there's no intensity to it. There's no point to it.
And like the same critics I think that weren't familiar with the type of person that this movie is about, that was festering online, and I'm not using stereotypes, or it's just like if you're of a certain age, you were seeing this before, like the word incel was a thing. You just knew that people like this existed. I'm not trying to, but these same critics probably were the ones that were misapplying the word incel every time there was a shooter or some weird thing. Today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. So, yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Next little piece of trivia here is this movie was filmed around the same time. So we mentioned Paul Blart earlier. This movie was filmed around the same time as Paul Blart Mall Cop.
And that destroyed this movie. I genuinely believe that this ruined any chance this movie had of finding the audience that would have responded to it, and that it needed to have any sort of lifespan.
Yeah. Despite the comparisons, the cast and crew of both films kept in touch with each other during production to avoid making the movies too similar.
That never would have happened. There's no way.
In an interview with GQ, Seth Rogen claimed that the idea for Paul Blart Mall Cop was stolen from Observe and Report.
I mean, I don't know.
No, totally. I mean, it's possible, but I do think that's funny. And Seth Rogen's like, you know what? Fuck Kevin James, you stole my idea, you fucking asshole. Like,
it's also like you think you guys nobody's had the idea about a loser mall cop before?
Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure every single like teenage kid who went to the mall had that same exact
exactly. We all wrote this movie in our head after.
Or not even just a mall cop, just any like petty authority figure.
Yeah.
Or like a mall or not a mall. A school like security resource officer. Or like a hall monitor. Like everybody's had that idea. But it is still very funny that Seth Rogen's like, you know what, Kevin James, you're a fucking asshole. You stole my idea.
Yeah, he stole my great idea. He made a great movie out of it.
Oh Jesus! And this is honestly the funniest fact I found. So apparently Chris Evans auditioned for this movie.
Oh,
I don't even know for who. I don't know if it was for Seth Rogen's character, but if that was the case, Chris Evans would have been awful.
Here's what I think.
Would have been terrible.
I think Chris Evans probably auditioned for Dennis.
Okay, that's a good point. Yes,
that's what I think.
That's a good point
for Seth's kind of confidant character.
Yes, and speaking of this, another funny little tidbit here. He was brought back for to audition for a second time because he had a panic attack during his first audition, and then during his second audition, he also had a panic attack.
But he was like, this wasn't like his first movie.
No, he was kind of, I mean, not like a big star at this point. He was a rising star, but
yeah.
He was in, movies like Not Another Teen Movie and stuff like that beforehand. So this wasn't his first rodeo. So I'm kind of surprised he had this hard of a time.
Was he? I'm not shaming him or anything. It's just I'm curious as to why. Was he not prepared for the script, and then he saw and then Dennis and Ronnie inject heroin in the bathroom.
Yeah,
teenagers.
Well, I mean, to be fair, in Not Another Teen Movie, there's a scene where he's literally has fucking whipped cream on his dick and balls, and he walks around ass naked. So that I don't know.
But that's like a different type of thing. I think if you're concerned about your public image, this guy plays Captain America.
That's true, yeah, and
that's like a party guy thing, right? I don't really remember Not Another Teen Movie, but
Yeah, no, I mean, to be fair, that movie does have some, relatively problematic elements, but that movie's like, it's like a straight up parody movie. Like, you're not.
No, that's just a dumb movie.
It's a dumb movie, exactly.
But if you're a guy who's like, maybe, there's no shame in this necessarily. Maybe you don't want to be in scary movies, especially as your stars rising, which I like that Seth Rogen did this. I also can understand. And you come in and you're like, I've never done this before. I'm making this movie, Observing Report, sound like it's a lot better than it is. I do like it, but I'm making it sound like it's more works better than it does.
Okay, so you know what? Okay, so there is probably a reason why he had a panic attack after looking at the script. I forgot he was in the 2 Fantastic Four movies in the mid 2000s.
Yeah,
those were big movies. Those were big fucking movies. So I could understand probably why he was like, oh shit, I'm having a career, I'm having my career's out going alright. I was in 2 big superhero movies, like people think I'm hot, and then all of a sudden he sees the script and he's like, oh shit, and probably
because maybe he wants to do. I'm just imagining. Maybe he wants to do this movie kind of, and he's just like, I don't know what I'm in for. I thought I was doing a Judd Apatow type thing.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I'm guessing.
So that's probably fair. So honestly, probably best for his career that he had 2 panic attacks and wasn't in this movie, to be honest. That was because he was only in Captain America only 2 years after this movie came out. So that would have probably fucked up things quite a bit for his career.
Yeah. But I have to imagine when I think about the cast of characters that he's this. I can't imagine the only other character I can see him playing is an officer who's Ray Liotta's character. And I gotta say, I think that was written for Liotta.
Yes. Actually, I think he was meant to play Brandy, but that's neither here nor there.
That scene of Brandy and Liotta fucking, of Anna Faris and Ray Liotta fucking in the car where she goes, shit on me. That would have been so good as Chris Evans.
I mean, honestly, I wish that was Chris Evans too, honestly. I would have jacked off to that. But talking about this movie, let's finally get into the synopsis here. So the opening credit sequence starts with a montage of them all being observed by security guard Ronnie Barnhart, played by Seth Rogen himself. The first actual scene of the movie, a flasher is going around exposing himself to women. And it's pretty hard to watch scene, to be honest, because it's a guy going around calling women bitches and whores and cunts and showing them his dick.
Things, yeah.
It's a pretty rough scene to get a comedy started, even a black comedy started.
Yeah.
No, it's not like a blaxploitation comedy movie, to be clear.
I'm gonna get you second.
Yeah, like fucking Seth Rogen doesn't have an afro being like, hands up in the air, motherfucker. Not like that.
Although that sounds great. That sounds like a good movie though.
Exactly right. And Ronnie is determined to stop it, even though frankly, his life seems pretty bleak, and he should focus on improving himself. His life's pretty terrible,
Yeah,
but he's like, I'm going to catch the small flasher. Fuck.
yeah. Ronnie's, a guy that we've all known. He's a guy that lives with his mom that has
A very dead end
visions
job.
for himself. Yeah,
Yes,
a job
yeah.
where he's a laughing stock.
You could even call his visions grandiose.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely that's a foreshadowing to what his personality disorder is in the movie. So that was very forced. I apologize. After a few scenes of Ronnie interacting with various people, including a lot of very bigoted dialogue back and forth, I'm not going to condemn the movie for it. It's the character. It's whatever.
Well, I actually think some of those scenes. Again, I knew a lot of guys like this. I grew up in the rural Midwest. Everyone I knew that wasn't directly a friend of mine, and even some of my friends were these big gun guys. I ended up more than a few weekends hanging out with guys, talking about guns they wanted to get. I don't know anything about guns. I was never comfortable with this, even before I was sort of, but like this is pretty accurate to how these guys talk and what they think is funny and what they think is okay and how they think you talk to girls and how the jokes you make about gay people or whatever.
Exactly.
As cringe comedy goes, I gotta say probably my biggest laugh was the scene where Ronnie's informing Anna Faris and her coworker, who is a gay man, about the flasher, and the man asks, with reason, "Do you think we're going to be safe?" And he goes, "Yeah, Bruce, I think we're going to be just fine. Should warn the pervert that Bruce is here." And I was like, "Oh, this is how these guys talk." Like, and I was like, as cringe comedy goes, I was like, "Ooh, this is rough, but this is effective. Like, this is a good portrayal of these guys."
Exactly. And to be clear to the audience at home who may or may not know, we did grow up in the rural upper Midwest. I grew up in the big city in the area, which has about 107,000 people. That's the big city in the area.
City slicker, yeah.
That's real city slicker shit. So anybody who listens to this on the coast, that's the type of environment we grew up in. And yeah, there are plenty of these types of individuals. So this kind of dialogue to me really didn't make me feel that uncomfortable, because I'm like, oh, I could just go back to my hometown and hear guys like this. If I just spent 5 minutes on the street outside of a bar.
Yeah, and like literally. Yeah, it's yeah. So if you're making a movie about these kind of, like, if there was no dialogue like that, it wouldn't ring true to me. Because I do think, like, I just want to get off the bat, because this was the big issue I think audiences, and especially very learned, older critics have with this movie. Ronnie he maybe is sympathetic in that you feel bad for him because he's so pathetic.
Yes.
But he is not good, and he does not deserve good in this world. And I do think that's the point of this movie. Like, he is bad. His actions are bad. He's deeply unwell, and nobody knows to help him, and he doesn't know how to help himself.
Yes, exactly. So after he interacts with some employees, including a girl working in the food court named Nell, who I can't remember the actress's name, but it was the director's wife in real life, which is very funny, who seems interested in him, but Ronnie's not interested in her at all. Very dismissive towards her.
Yeah, and this is the thing, again, thinking about the type of guys that we now, in mainstream discourse, we might call, they're like incels or 4chan guys. Ronnie, he would be like an online Trump guy. A few years after.
Oh yeah, a griper for
he
sure.
Would be. Yeah, he absolutely would be. Is what's one of the big things about the incel is that it's you see reflected all the time, but I think more people are aware now. Because I'm going to keep going back to how I think this movie's actually really prescient to that phenomenon that was growing, whether or not the filmmakers even knew about it. This is the type of guy that's always existed and is becoming unified in the years after this movie. Is that they're kind of awkward guys. They resent these beautiful women that mostly don't exist for not noticing them, or they feel entitled to them, or they're delusional and think that they're like them. And they ignore women that look and act and maybe would like them because they just think they're above them, which is how Ronnie treats Nell. Even when he's like friendly to her, that's how he views her.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Damn, that's bringing back some memories of my teenage years, man. Goddamn.
This is a rough movie to watch, because you watch it and you go like, oh, this. I mean, if you're someone who's been delusional or depressed or whatever, even not the way Ronnie is, you're kind of like, oh, this is This is stirring up some stuff.
Yeah, exactly, right. And then the next scene after this, the Flasher appears again and assaults Ronnie's love interest, Brandy. I believe, was that in the parking lot?
Yes, yeah, that's in the parking lot. Yeah.
So, and that is his love interest in the movie, Brandy, played by Anna Faris, who is like a perfume girl at like some retail store,
like a Sephora type store. Yeah.
Yeah, like so. Yeah, like, Sephora. Yes, exactly. Yep. That's
Sephora. I'm so fucking dumb.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Next scene here. After Detective Ray Liotta comes in to get a description, not the character's not name is
Detective Ray Liotta. Let's just call that.
Yeah, it was Ray Liotta playing himself.
He's being Ray Liotta.
Yes, but after Detective, played by the actor Ray Liotta, comes in to get
an electrifying performance. I'm sorry. It's
so great performance. He comes in to get a description of the suspect. Ronnie takes things into his own hands and gets a crack team to solve the case. So after he gets the crack team to solve the case, that night someone breaks into a shoe store at the mall. And
Ray Liotta's back. I think just a little bit. So who is his crack team? Do we want to get into our supporting characters here?
Oh yes, go ahead.
So we have the Ewans, two Asian twins who Ronnie refers to as expendable. One of you dies, God gave me another one right there. And they are gun nerds. They go to the shooting range and they just destroy cutouts of muggers, and they fantasize about guns, and they talk about how they're pestering the mall manager to give them assault rifles, and they get just totally horny describing like how many fucking shells new rifles are carrying and shit like that. But they're very quiet, and they're like big nerds, just kind of chubby Asian guys with kind of stringy hair. And maybe the closest thing okay, this is gonna reveal maybe something about me. The closest thing other than Nell to a well-adjusted normal person in this movie, which is Dennis, who is also trouble. Dennis is at this point Ronnie's hype man. He stands on Ronnie's side. He kind of kisses ass, and this is maybe because I like this character more or less, and I think it's one of the few characters who kind of exists at least a good amount of the time outside of Ronnie's delusions, because he is at this point, it's pretty clear in the film. I don't think we're spoiling anything or getting ahead of ourselves. Delusional in the way he sees himself and his duty to protect them all. Ronnie's kind of Dennis rather is kind of a kiss ass, but he's not doing it. The impression isn't so much for Brown though, it's because they're mall security. It's maybe because he's bored and maybe kind of feels bad for Ronnie is how it feels to me. And he stands and just kind of echoes everything Ronnie says to everyone.
Yes, very much so. Was there anybody else on the team?
So there's a trainee.
That guy. Yeah, I was going to say.
But he's and I think this is by design. The whole point is to have he works for another store, just some store in the mall, but he's maybe looking at transferring to security.
That's it.
Just for a normal reason, because there's better pay or something. He gets to walk around more. Who exists there to be a normal guy that is witness to the weird and antisocial dynamics of the mall security team, which is the Ewans. I don't know the individual characters' names because they exist as a unit.
No, I don't remember that guy's name either, but I do remember who you're talking about.
There's Dennis and there's Ronnie. And in this chain of men, Ronnie is, and this reveals, I guess, how pathetic everyone is, he's the head of mall security. And the Ewans seem to genuinely kind of look up to him. Like, Ronnie is probably, if we get to know the Ewans, more socially adept and likable to people than the Ewans are. Probably would say something maybe about what they would be like if we got inside of their heads. Dennis just kind of, at this point, just seems like a guy who just kind of maybe doesn't give a shit about his job and just wants to make Ronnie feel good. And, maybe he's kissing ass, but doesn't really seem to have any sort of career aspirations, so that's unlikely. Yeah. And then there's this guy who just is meeting them and looking at being in mall security who's vaguely uncomfortable with the weird, sort of codependent nature of their mall security team.
Exactly right. That's a really good way to describe the team. I like your description because I was actually kind of having a hard time coming up with words to describe them for the most part.
I thought about that a lot watching this. I think that one of my favorite aspects of this film is the crack team.
Yeah, the crack team, as I
Elite
call
Forces,
them.
they
Yeah.
call them. Well, Ronnie calls them special elite forces. And,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just back up a little bit. I know it's a short movie. I want to kind of get a little bit into the weeds about it. So Ray Liotta is here as a detective, a real cop. He's basically this is a role that I'm pretty sure was written for Liotta, and Ronnie feels like he's fucking up Ronnie's quote unquote case.
Yeah.
He says to his alcoholic mother, Ronnie, that is, I think this pervert might be the best thing that's ever happened to me. Because he fantasizes about bringing down this pervert, who he exaggerates to other people what the Flash, not that flashing effect, but he refers to him as sexually assaulting women, which is what flashing is, but you get the impression that Ronnie is making it sound more violent to make him sound tougher.
Exactly, yeah.
And Ray Liotta's here, and this is kind of probably a routine case to this guy. This is a cop who's worked his way up from being a beat cop. And also, Ray Liotta's character is, this is saying something, because he is a cop through and through in this movie. One of the more sympathetic characters in this movie, because he has to deal with Ronnie. And immediately it's like, he's seen so many guys like Ronnie and his wife, and he's just like, he's trying so hard that first day to be civil to them. Just sitting there and just trying to do his job, just wants to be in and out. It should be such a normal case for him. And he's got this, this fucking loser, this psycho.
Yeah, this loser psycho, exactly, yeah.
Again, who is, Ray Liotta is almost like an ideal cop, if such a thing exists. He doesn't like that Ronnie is, so Ronnie harasses workers in the mall who are non-white, including because he's not sorry. They don't know how to say a guy's name. But, and Ray Liotta seems to have pretty much contempt for that. They're basically making this like an ideal cop that can see through Ronnie immediately.
Yes, I'm sure the detective deals with people like Ronnie probably every fucking day.
Every time he goes to a mall, for sure.
And also, I feel like Albuquerque is very much a hot couch city. Like, I've been watching Breaking Bad, but Albuquerque really does seem like a hot couch fucking city. Like, it really fucking does.
Well, imagine how hot the couches get there.
Yeah. It's the desert.
It just makes sense.
Yeah. Jesus. So eventually Ronnie decides to apply to become a police officer. And he actually does a ride along with the detective. And the detective strands Ronnie in a bad neighborhood with a bunch of random gang members and this is a funny connection with the gang members. It's very much like a Assault on Precinct 13 situation because they're all different.
Yeah.
They're like a multiracial gang.
Well, and I think part of that is because this is a movie. My other read on that is that Ronnie watches a lot of movies like that. Because this movie is, and I think at the time people criticized it for this, but now everyone Dick Wright's Joker goes, it's like the new generation's Taxi Driver, and it's like, okay, but like, and the reason that I've actually brought up this movie is that I feel like there's a renaissance of saying like the Joker is good because it cribs from Scorsese, but this movie was like a joke because of it, was what a lot of critics said at the time. And it's like, well, no, I feel like this was like Taxi Driver in the 2000s, and it was like in a very fresh way. I think that's why I want to, and it doesn't always work. But that's the direct analog for this.
That's interesting. That's an interesting analog to it.
This is the first scene where we really see Ronnie's solutions. He is stranded on a corner called the Crossroads. Ray Liotta tells him about it and then says, I'm going to let you walk in so he can strand there. And Ronnie's kind of trying to be like, he's like, I'm honored. I've heard of that. And he's like, yeah, I bet you have. I'm going to leave him there. I'm just going to break this scene down real quick.
Yeah.
A small kid, like a little kid, probably 10 at the oldest, maybe 12, probably like 10, walks up to him and tries to sell him crafts. Ronnie goes, grabs the kid. Then some gangbangers come up to Ronnie. One of them is the kid's father.
Yes,
Ronnie said.
Played by Danny McBride.
Yep, and it's eastbound and down. And Danny McBride, always great to see him. I always like to see that guy.
Oh, me too. I love Danny McBride.
He owns. So, gun to his head, Ronnie's on his knees. He's crying. And then a Queen song starts to play. The entire filming of the scene shifts, and Ronnie destroys with like his security flashlight, his big elongated metal flashlight, these 3 armed like gangbangers.
Yeah.
Then we cut back. this is all with like big flamboyant rock music, and that's the thing. And I want to get this because I never have seen anyone. It's such an obvious thing that I remember reading reviews and no one ever commented on it. Taxi Driver Seattle, but here it's I think a lot more obvious when we slip into solutions because the thing is classic rock, like kind of a little bit hackneyed. But I like Queen, I like a lot of this shit. Classic rock starts playing, and I think that's because that's what a guy like Ronnie in 2009 might have listened to.
No, he loved in real life. This guy would love Bohemian Rhapsody and would jack.
Yeah, and he would think it's like really sweet and sensitive, like he is very powerful music. And whenever a song like that plays, whenever a Doors song plays, I think that's when we slip into what Ronnie imagines happening. Then we cut back to a film shot like the rest of the film because the action scenes are shot completely differently. They're very high octane.
Yes,
just rock music playing, and the rest of the film is kind of like a Judd Apatow thing, very improv. And then it's just Ronnie dragging this little kid into the police office where Ray Liotta is laughing about him and screaming at this little kid. The read on this scene, not to be into it too much, is that Ronnie feels like he's just saved his life and is teaching us to listen. When in reality, he probably just grabbed some kid who is out there not really by each other and dragged him to a police office and screamed at him. And what's going to happen to this kid now? But Ronnie feels like a big man because he's screaming at this child.
That's a really funny way to look at it. I did not pick up on that. That's actually really funny.
Maybe I think this movie. Maybe I'm seeing more definite, but I'm pretty confident in this for me.
No, I think you're probably right. To be honest, I would not be surprised by that. Then the scene after that, Ronnie coerces, and it's the only way to describe it. He coerces Brandy to go on a date with him because he's like, oh, hey, get in my car real quick. I'll take you to your car. And he's
she's scared to walk through the parking lot because again, she's been flashed.
Yes, because of the flasher. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So coerces to go on a date with him,
refusing to let her out of the golf cart.
Yes.
I mean, it's played like an Apatow scene, but like. That's a very realistic thing, and maybe a guy like that thinks that's a cute, charming thing, but that's a creepy thing to do.
Oh, it is, yes. And speaking of creepy things, on the date, he tells her that he's currently medicated on clonazepam, and she's like, oh,
Benzos.
Cool. Yeah,
because she's kind of a dumb party girl. You know, it's actually a pretty, and this is not, I think, necessarily satire. It's actually kind of a sexist stereotype. It's actually a little bit icky, like to use a dumb word. It gets into a weird thing about like this type of kind of has contempt, I think, for this kind of character. I wasn't super chill with the portrayal of Brandy.
And talking about portrayal, she takes a bunch of medication with alcohol. And
a lot of alcohol,
and then it pans over, and I shouldn't say pans over to, it transitions to Ronnie and Brandy. Well, Ronnie's raping her on a bed, and
she's passed out.
And again,
on the dinner, as she's taking the clonazepam, there is like soft classic rock music. I think it's Dr. Hook. It's some AM 70s pop rock thing, and he's going, "You're so beautiful," and then it cuts back to him assaulting her in her bed, and there's no music playing. Again, I'm pretty sure that the classic rock denotes when we are in Ronnie's head, even though there it's pretty rough to see it that way because she's like he's walking her up and she's falling on top of him and throwing up and he's like kissing her. It's very
It's a scene. I'll just say that.
I do think the intention of all this is to create a nasty type of guy who does stuff like this. I don't think if this movie is made, that scene gets approached the same way because I think people like my issue with a lot of satire, and I've been guilty of this in my life. You're trying satire, and I was telling you about this just when I was watching it. If you, as you know, hate to use some impulse stuff too much. If you are like a white guy, like a cis white guy, and you're trying to do satire about the bad things that like cis straight white guys do, you maybe don't know how when you're crossing a line into something that people don't want to see and that maybe you shouldn't be portraying. You haven't probably experienced that.
Yes.
And I think that's what this scene is. I think if that gets made now, there's someone there probably to tell the filmmakers, hey, people don't want to see this. Even as dark comedy, this stirs up bad feelings for people that you probably don't understand. Like even if you're trying to say something about the type of person that does it.
Yes, and I would say to this to the audience at home listening to this, if if that scene would make you hate this movie, not want to watch it, I would honestly understand because it's pretty difficult to fucking watch.
Yeah, it is.
So
I think again, as someone who I do think this movie is both well intentioned. I think I largely like it, and I think I watched this and I actually audibly think I'm going to watch it. So I was just like, oh, this is you know, being a little old, not in high school anymore, and think you just you get older and you meet more people with experiences you don't have and have actual drama and have bad shit that's happening. When you think about how they might feel just seeing that as like, oh, isn't that a fucked up thing? But it kind of a throwaway kind of way. I don't know. It's rough.
I agree.
Moving on.
Yeah. Speaking of moving on, Ronnie ends up failing the psychological evaluation. He actually passes the physical exam, and
I question how much he questioned the physical because
that's true. Yeah, that's
no,
true.
I'm not.
Because in the physical exam in the montage, he's just like crushing it.
Well, but there's two ways that I read this. There's rock music play. There's another thing. Sorry, I think the song they play out it's two-way, which is a great song. It's also not the most obvious song, so I'm happy that it's there so much. The other thing is that probably is him crushing it, but I don't think that you're supposed to push people down as you run past them. Even
no, you're not supposed to.
I don't think you're supposed to like assault the other applicants, which is what he does. He's just running through and just kind of sucker punching everyone, feeling tough, and not doing particularly well on it. Just passing it the way it's supposed to, but kind of a chubby guy.
Yeah. And during the psychological evaluation, he admits that he is unmedicated. With his bipolar disorder.
One of the best scenes in the film. If I had to distill this movie down, that scene's a great point. If you want to see what I mean about this being a certain type of guy.
Yeah, and speaking of good scenes, he goes up to the food court and interacts with his friend Nell, but of course she sees him more seriously than that, and she starts crying and she's talking about how all the employees at the food court are making fun of her because she
is there anyone that we want to name drop that works with Nell?
Yes, I do believe that the manager of this fast food establishment is Patton Oswalt, which was a fantastic little cameo there.
No, I love it. I just thought,
Yeah, and Ronnie assaults him and like rubs his face into oven, which is very funny.
Well, it's satisfying because this is a scene that also is not a delusion. This is not Ronnie imagining him being tough. This is a scene that is tough to watch, and you would hate to say it. You're kind of satisfied to see it, but he pushes his face into an open oven and says that if any of the employees say anything now again, he's going to kill them. And it's you're kind of glad to see it, but you're also like, oh shit, like this is
not going to end well. Yeah, exactly. And then after that, he goes into the parking lot and tases somebody who he like actively provokes.
Yeah, this is he's now not a cop, and who's the person that tells him he's not going to be a cop? It's Ray Liotta. And I want to just point this out because this is a thought I had watching this movie, and I still like it, but I sent this to you. One of Ray Liotta's cop friends goes into the closet because he wants to listen in as Ray Liotta is telling Ronnie that he's failed the physical. Now, again, I've said you kind of sympathize, or I do, with Liotta's character, even though he's a cop. Mm-hmm. As he's reading the thing to Ronnie, you start to get the sense, I think, because Liotta is clearly the best actor in this movie.
Oh, by quite a bit.
And you can see his character sort of realizing that this isn't funny as he's saying it. Mm-hmm. And this is how I felt watching this movie, because I very strongly advocated for us reviewing it. His friend walks out and says, I thought this was going to be kind of funny, but it's actually just sad.
Yeah.
And that is kind of this movie. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way, but that is almost like a mission statement for this movie.
Yeah, no, it is.
That is how audiences must have felt going in. How self-aware that is, I don't know.
That is a very funny, possibly self-aware moment. That is very funny. Ronnie
and then Ronnie goes crazy. He goes back to work and he's just beating up kids. He's beating up.
Yeah, and he does along with Dennis as well, and they're taking pictures of girls in like the fucking changing room and stuff, and beating up kids.
In the bathroom.
Yeah, shooting up here.
And this is the thing where we start to see.
Now that to be fair, this also this mischief around the mall, that has got to be the most like New Mexico scene in this entire movie.
Oh yeah.
That's like the most New Mexico scene in this entire movie. Like I imagine New Mexico is a bunch of mall cops shooting up heroin in a bathroom, assaulting kids, and taking pictures of women in changing rooms.
Yeah, and this is sort of when we see the other side of Dennis. So up to here, just says whatever Riley wants him to, supports him. Just seems kind of a chill guy. He maybe doesn't care that much about his style. Then he says, Riley, he's trying to help it, but now we see that there may be some other stuff with Dennis that's maybe not as dark as Riley's stuff. It isn't what we thought initially. Which is that he says, hey, just have to not care. That's good advice if you're all happy. We take that too. I take pictures when they beat up children because I just don't give a shit. And people see me as a joke, which is what Dennis says. And he says, doesn't people see us as jokes? Doesn't that hurt your feelings? Yeah, and of course.
Speaking of, after this little mischief, Dennis reveals that he was the one that broke into the shoe store at the mall. Ronnie insists.
Ronnie can't abide. Yeah. Sorry. And this is the thing with.
And then Ronnie and him get into a brief argument, and then Dennis knocks him unconscious and flees in a
raffle car.
Yeah, with the display car in the mall, the raffle car, which is very funny. And I love
by the little rubber band.
Yeah, and I love the scene when the mall like owner or mall manager is just like, you let him drive away in the raffle car. It's
I think this is the thing where we see this is another again. I might be giving more credit to this. So Ronnie, who has illusions of being a hero and a cop, but really he doesn't really want to be a hero, even though he thinks he does. He just wants to shoot people. He just wants to be a big man, So he can abide. He can do heroin with Dennis. He can take pictures of him. He can beat up children. But stealing from the mall that they're supposed to protect, the most important thing. Ronnie's heartbroken by that because he's a loser and that's his identity.
Yes, exactly. So, and then the next scene here, Ronnie decides to go undercover in order to catch the flasher. But when he catches Brandy having sex with the detective in the parking lot, he confronts her in front of onlookers at the mall the next day. Now, that was the scene you mentioned earlier where Brandy is fucking Ray Liotta's character, and he goes, "Shit on me," or what was that?
Shit on me.
Yeah,
she says, "Shit on me."
Which is just that is such a late 2000s like sex comedy thing where it's like, what's really gross? Something really gross.
What's the thing that you would hate to see on a girl that you thought like you did?
Yeah, right. Oh God. Oh, that would be a pretty rough. If I had a crush and a girl said that, I'd be like, even if she wasn't fucking another dude, I'd be like, that's pretty fucking horrible. Like, don't.
You're like, I don't want to think about that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, that Ronnie thinks of Ray Liotta as his enemy. Ray Liotta obviously doesn't, and probably, even though he's done, he's said some shitty things, not even shitty, just, he's been angry with him. He probably doesn't see him as an enemy. He's just like, this guy's fucked up. He's got problems, I just don't want to be around him.
Exactly.
But to Ronnie, Ray Liotta is like his menace so much more than the Flasher is.
No, absolutely, 100%. At some point, the police are summoned to the mall, and Ronnie fights them off. Now, this is a pretty funny fight scene, I would say.
And again, instant shift. Ray Liotta pretty much begs Ronnie because again, Ray Liotta pretty professional. Probably, hates this thing. Does not want this guy who he now knows is deeply in love with. Pretty unrealistic of a cop, I gotta say. They've made Ray Liotta like almost the ideal cop in this movie in a lot of ways, I think. Like a cop that doesn't really exist. But he's kind of like, hey, we just want you out of here.
Exactly.
And Ronnie refuses. The cops charge him, and then Queen starts training. He defends himself pretty well.
Yeah, but eventually, of course, he gets overpowered because there's like 20 cops.
And the music fades out, and then Ray Liotta hits him with a signpost, and he's unconscious and just getting wailed on by like 5 cops.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is probably all that happened.
Yeah. So a few days after that, Ronnie's mother gives him a postcard from Dennis in Mexico. Uh, and
This I think is real. I'm pretty confident this is not a delusion because
yeah.
I don't think that. Sorry, I'm gonna.
No,
I
no, go
find
ahead.
this the most interesting part of the movie, so I'm gonna try to point out when I think of it.
Uh,
I think that this is not how Ronnie would have imagined his letter from Dennis if it was fake. Because Dennis's letter is very honest. It's very like, hey, I'm a guy that steals shit, and I just don't care about the things you care about. And it's probably that even though he does like Ronnie, he does think he's sort of pathetic, and he probably thinks they're both sort of pathetic.
yeah,
I think
exactly.
Roddy would not have imagined the letter this way. He would have thought it. He would have imagined Dennis saying, "Oh, I shouldn't be stealing things" or something, which Dennis never says. He never really apologizes.
No, he has no remorse, obviously.
Yeah,
So, um, Ronnie returns to the mall, but of course he's been fired. He is now despondent that he no longer works security. He discovers that Nell's cast has been removed. She kisses him just before the flasher arrives and exposes himself to the whole food court. And Ronnie's standing there like,
You can't keep getting away with it! He can't keep getting away with it!
And now here's Ronnie's moment to shine. After a brief chase, Ronnie incapacitates the flasher by shooting him in the shoulder.
and this is not. I think, and I'm not sure about this. This is not imagined. This is Roddy's one moment of actual action.
Oh, it was yes, it was so brutal that I feel like it was just so unglamorized. There's no way that it wasn't.
Yeah, and it's also not that cool. He just like shot a guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I do find it interesting, and I don't know who this actor is, but honestly, real cojones to this guy for having his fucking little ass dick and balls in this entire scene just being paraded around.
When I remember this movie in my head until I rewatched it today, I remember that guy as being Principal Anderson from Billy Madison, but it's not.
That's really fucking funny. As he picks the bleeding flasher up, Brandy thanks him, but of course he rejects and publicly humiliates her for sleeping with the detective.
Which again, has Queen playing out this time, so that probably doesn't happen. He probably shot this guy.
Yes,
and it's kind of uncomfortably escorted over the wall.
In all honesty, I was with you, Ronnie, until you slut shamed the woman you raped. That's really fucked up, dude. You shouldn't do that. No, I'm just kidding, but
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
And in the final scenes of the movie, Ronnie brings the flasher to the police station, gloating that he has won by apprehending him.
And then Ray Liotta says, "You caught a pervert. Great job, Ronnie."
Yeah.
I don't know. I love Ray Liotta's performance in this. You sense every bit of it. I can so put myself in this guy's head, like feelings.
Yeah, I can too, very much so. And then the very final scene, Ronnie is subsequently interviewed by the local news, having regained his job and started dating Nell. And he's just like, you know what? I'm going to lay down the fucking law here. And that's how the movie ends.
And now, I don't think he gets his job back because, again, I'm just backtracking just a little bit. He shoots the pervert. He probably is not supposed to be at the mall.
No, he's not.
So he goes back there after he's fired to buy his coffee, talks to Nell. Before she gets in, he starts crying because he doesn't get his free cup of coffee. He's just a normal citizen. He was always a citizen.
Yeah, he was always a citizen.
He was always a civilian. He's a fucking rented cop, as Ray Liotta's character says. He shoots this guy brutally. So the bomb answer is pretty nonplussed. He goes, "Jesus, Ronnie, you fucking killed him." When he sees that the guy's not dead in his mouth, he goes, "Okay." And I think this is real. Going by my theory about the rock music thing, the moment that the manager takes out the keys and tosses them to Ronnie, Queen starts playing again. I think it's Queen. It's some classic rock song. So I think at that moment, we're now seeing, this is like the end of Taxi Driver, when Travis is getting the letters from the Jodie Foster's parents and all that shit. This is his happy ending. That, like, what really happened is probably the mall was like, you gotta fucking go. The manager maybe feels bad for Ronnie. Everyone's like, you gotta get the fuck out of here. You gotta go. He goes, and he just lives his life of weird delusion. Or maybe goes back on his meds. Probably not.
Yeah, probably not, to be honest.
Probably not. The most normal he ever is in this movie is after he gets the shit kicked out of by Randy in the past and has to go back on his meds. And he says, "Oh, maybe I'll look for a job." And he's broken and sad, but he's not crazy. So that's what all of that, and literally he walks out of the mall carrying this bloody guy down to the station. Queen is playing, everyone claps. Like this is a fantasy. He's ushered quickly out of the mall after shooting an unarmed man.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I'm honestly glad we're talking about it because I did miss a lot of these cues on my first watch. To be honest, like I wasn't not watching this movie, but it definitely was like, I was like doing dishes or cooking, and I was like looking in between various scenes a little bit. And like I said, I did watch this movie, to be clear. I watched every scene, but every once in a while I'd look away and I'd be like, oh shit, did I miss something? I'd rewind and I'm like, okay, I guess I missed something.
Well, and also I want to point out because I like this movie. I feel responses. This is not as good a movie as I feel it. I'm very aware of that watching it. But when this came out, I really liked it.
No, and I do want to say though too is that I did like this movie. I want to be clear here. This was a movie I was not expecting a lot of what happened in this movie, but I did like it.
It's hard to watch now because I see it is very of its time in ways that I can't fault because that was my adolescence. That's a lot of that kind of that snarky dialogue. And I think a lot of that probably did inform my humor, and even like the edgy sense of irony. I know informed a lot of my sense of humor and how for better and worse. But there is stuff where you're just like, this doesn't work. This feels dated. In particular, the scene with Ronnie and the mall vendor, as he said, sorry, early in the film, where they're saying "fuck you" to each other at different lines. Yeah, it's very dated, very Judd Apatow.
All right, and I will say let's get into the reviews here, because we have mentioned obviously our feelings about this movie, so no real need to relitigate that. Although I will say I do like the movie. All right, so let's get into this first review here. So this is from Jay, Amazon reviews to be clear. This is from Jay, who said, "Do not buy Blu-ray discs from the source." A 1-star review.
Great. Tells me everything I need to know about the film.
I was very disappointed to find the Blu-ray disc with the digital copy included had an expiration date of April 2010 when I tried to download it onto my computer. I would recommend buying from a reputable store so the digital copy can get you a current, not expired expiration date.
Where did you buy this movie from, Taylor?
I downloaded it from a certain bay. Yes. I downloaded it from a very reputable source, hindudownloads.biz.wikia.gov.
I rented it from Amazon, not out of any sense of Ronnie Biggs. Ronnie Biggs is a Mr. Show picture. Fuck me. Not out of any Ronnie-esque sense of duty or justice, but because I'm not tech savvy, and I was afraid I would give myself a virus if I tried to download it. Well, I spent $3 to rent it, but I am not mad that I did it, like I am with Butterfly Effect. I'm glad we did the episode. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I was like, I paid fucking money for this.
And you know what, Brian? You had to mention another Breaking Bad reference. You had to mention Bob Odenkirk. Of course you did, from Mr. Show.
Yeah, of course. That's my favorite show ever. Probably my favorite show. I'm gonna think.
It's fucking fantastic. I do love it. All right. So next review here from Becca, who has 3 stars. That's the name of the review. 3 stars, and she says love. That's it. Just love. 3 stars.
I had friends who I showed this movie who just did not pick up on the irony or the subtext, and they completely bought Ronnie's delusions and thought that he was just cool, and they were happy for him in the end. And I did not bother trying to explain to them the film as I saw it.
Yes.
So maybe that's how this lady feels.
Perhaps, yeah. And speaking of other feelings here, let's get into an actual substantive review from the always reputable Dr. Satan, who says, a very good dark comedy, 4 stars. The movie starts off strong with many laughs. It does bog down somewhat in the middle third, as most comedies do when attempting to switch to a drama portion of the story. This is the part of the movie when the main character believes his life is all coming together only to have it all fall apart.
No, that's the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the best part of the movie.
I really wasn't sure how the director was going to pull the end of the movie back into a dark comedy, but Jody Hill did an excellent job of making it all come together in a nice little package. Definitely worth watching. Yeah, definitely worth watching if you like a dark comedy. For comparison, I thought it was better than Superbad and as good or better than Knocked Up and Zack and Miri Make a Porno.
That is a great reference point for this movie. That isn't the thing that killed this movie at the box office, was people coming in expecting that.
Exactly. I thought Pineapple Express and The Foot Fist Way were boring. I don't know what the fuck Foot Fist Way is.
I've heard of it. I've never watched it. I think it's pretty well liked.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I that's the only movie out of those ones that this guy mentioned that I've never fucking heard of in my life.
I don't think there is. We're going back to Avatar with this. I actually don't think that's a good. It's good to point out the era that this is and kind of like aesthetically where it fits in. Mm-hmm. But it seems like this guy's watching this movie going, oh, this is like a darker Avatar movie. And I don't quite think it's that. I think it's, I don't know. It's a deeply unpleasant movie about very broken people, pretty much all around.
Yes, no, I totally agree with that. And speaking of broken people, let's get into the last review here. Langham says, so bad, seriously hard to watch, 1 star. This is one of the worst, most difficult movies to watch I have ever seen. It has a racist, potentially mentally ill main character that is even less likable than you would think possible.
This is literally the point of the movie. This is literally. I'm sorry.
No, and we did mention that. We did mention that earlier with I know the idea that you don't need to identify with a character in order.
I don't mean to harp on it. It's just I actually think this movie's, if anything, kind of ham-fisted with that.
No, I agree. So he actually date rapes another character, assaults several police officers, and is still somehow portrayed as the hero at the end of the movie. It is absolute. It is absolute garbage, and in no way deserves a 50% on here. The bad thing is that the rape is by and large overlooked in the plot, and the racism is very fair. And the racism is somehow overlooked and even used as a positive. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
Does the rated author say I don't agree with that, or are you saying that?
No, I'm saying I don't agree with that. I do not think that's seen as a positive.
No, I think the racism is actually a pretty clear. It's a way to set up who this guy is early on, and really, before we get to the meat of how psycho he is. That's what I think.
Yes.
The scene about the rape scene. Yeah, I actually don't necessarily disagree with what this guy's saying. I don't think that is given the intensity that it should have if you're going to do that, even in a dark comedy.
Yes. And the last sentence here is, terrible movie, don't watch it. Don't let anyone you know watch it. It is just bad. And of course, that was a 1-star review. So I didn't want to balance out some of the reviews.
It's funny. Except for the Blu-ray review, which I did this digital. I guess all of these reviews are fair to me. 3-star that just says love.
Yeah, it just says love.
There are things about this movie that I love. I definitely loved it when it came out.
So yes,
I think that final review is dumb. That's a dumb person. But yes, whatever. They probably, are still mad about, Bernie Bros. And they say they hashtag thank you, Brandon.
Yes. Speaking of dumb opinions here, do you have any final thoughts before we finish up here?
I think that this movie is, if you like, say, kind of like meta commentary, that's one of my favorite things. It's like this kind of something. If you like stuff like Starship Troopers, if you like, the kind of tongue-in-cheek Verhoeven stuff, if you like Roberto Bolaño's Nazi literature in the Americas, like dark satirical works about some strain of reactionary or fascism. I think there's stuff in here for this movie for you. It's not as good as those things. Of course, Starship Troopers and Bolaño's book are masterpieces. This is not a masterpiece, but if you were someone that responds to those types of things, I'd say check this out. Especially if you grew up on forums and you watched kind of the festering growth of a weird and socially maladroit type of young man. If you're of a certain age, I would say you'll see a lot of things that you recognize in this film that I don't think wider audiences recognized when it came out.
Yes.
Which is widely why I wanted to talk about it.
Yes, and I totally agree with that. This is gonna be Taylor signing off here.
Bye bye. Love you all. Taylor,
Exactly.
love you.
I love you too, and I love this movie. I would recommend watching this movie in all honesty. But see y'all later before it ends. Oh no, but no, I'm just kidding.
All right, I'm done.
All right, have a good one, everyone. Bye bye.